Thanks for having me, Joan. Appreciate it. So WPA, Workers Project Administration, it was part of the FDR, a New Deal to help alleviate unemployment during the Great Depression era, which was great. It did start as a CWA, a Civil Works Administration project. After about a year, those funds did run out, and then the WPA project picked it up, and that's what the lodge is known for. It also gets associated with the national parks because you have the park architecture that's associated to what Yosemite and Yellowstone lodges are about there with that piece there. So BBA, Bachelor's in Business Administration, on that piece there. From SMU, I focused on MIS, Management Information Sciences. So the business side of computers back in the day in the late 80s, early 90s there. So and thank you for having me. And so before I get going, just want to open it up to let everyone know they can ask questions during the talk. This is more a discussion. I've got the slide deck put together, but it's more to foster the discussion about how we can basically foster the dark skies in the place that we live in terms of the Keweenaw, the peninsula, and the Upper Peninsula in general on that piece there. We are in International Dark Sky Park. It's designated back in 2022, June 21st, the longest day of the year at that time. And so that's kind of ironic that the least amount of darkness day, we were nominated to be a dark sky park there. There's about a little over 200 of us. There's 4 in Michigan. One was just recently designated a sanctuary, which is Beaver Island. The other 2 other NUS are basically the Headlands, which was the 7th or 8th park designated in the world. And then you have Dr. T.K. Lawless down near Casablanca, Michigan Southwest part of it there. So there's 4 of us that are tied to it. Then you have 6 state parks there. So Scott Bowen just stayed with us, who's the director of the DNR of Michigan. And basically, he understands the dark skies, which is really neat with that. He's doing his tour of Michigan. He was designated as the director in September of last year, and he's going around all, I think, 106 parks is what he told me. And so that's rather neat to see, with that there. So, all right, I'm going to put this in the presentation mode, and hopefully everyone will be able to see it. And I'll be able to also see you all ask questions. If I miss anything, Joan or David, please let me know on that piece there. But we should be good to go with things here. Okay. Let's see, make sure. Okay, this was this morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. You had looking to the east, the sunrise, which is rather neat. And this is at the front part of the Keweenaw Mountain Lodge there. If you turned your head and looked to the left, you actually would see a hummingbird, and you'd actually see fog rolling over Brockway Mountain with a rainbow coming down. So rather neat morning to have things start the day. So pretty special to where you see something like this up in the top of the Keweenaw. You wouldn't get that in other places of the world there. That said, we're here to talk about light or darkness in terms of how you look at it there. As we had a dark sky photography workshop, monthly one last night. Joan, Tom Oliver, he was teaching that piece there. And he likes to talk about that human beings are really good at shining light up on that pieces there. But that said, that takes away from the darkness on that. So if you look at this, the arrow is where we are. We're in the nice dark spot part of it, but the United States, especially east of the Mississippi, is rather bright. And so pretty interesting. This shows you light pollution or light throughout the United States and the lower part of Canada there. And so it's pretty interesting to see how this is developed. Now, light pollution is one thing that we can easily control. So it's really interesting that we are, shining more light up in the world over the last 40 or 50 years. And so if I zoom in here, okay, you actually can see where we sit at the top of the Keweenaw. You can see where Houghton and Hancock are, as well as Calumet and Laurium. You can see how Marquette plays into it with the light pollution. Sault Ste. Marie, where you were yesterday, Joan, where they're sitting, and so forth. And so the green is okay. The yellow and the orange just makes it very difficult to look up, and see the stars. And so if you come back to this bigger map here, You can see Chicago, and where it's really, really red, that's going to be a downtown area. You look at, Detroit over here. You look at the Twin Cities in terms of that piece there. And you go over to New York City and the Eastern Seaboard with it. And they're having difficulty to look up and see clearly the Milky Way, much less, looking north and seeing things that we like to talk about in terms of northern lights. We look across the water here up at the Dark Sky Park. And so if, again, go back here, Tom likes to talk about when he's looking at photography, we actually don't have much light to the north of us in Canada. And that's another reason why it's a nice place up here to see the northern lights, because you're looking straight across the water. The only light pollution that we have looking north, we can see it, is Thunder Bay, and that's sitting up in here. We can actually see the glow from Houghton Hancock up here. I'll show you a picture in just a minute of that. And you can also see the glow about 146 miles away in terms of Marquette on that piece there. And so it's interesting how light, the light dome, basically travels, through the atmosphere. And so if you look at this, half of the Keweenaw is very virgin in regards to lights, and hopefully we'll be able to educate people to understand the beauty of that, and understand why a certain number of dark hours is important in wildlife as well as human beings there. So just giving you a perspective on this stuff. You look at it and we zoom in again, you can see Houghton and you see Calumet and William on this piece here. We measure up here the dark sky quality using an SQM light meter. And when we filed our application back in 2021 initially, in about a year process with 4 different versions of the application, our light quality was 21.5 and 21.6, depending on if you remove the outliers on that piece there. Anything above 20 in the SQM scale represents a pretty dark place that you're sitting at there. And so to be a dark sky park, you need to be 20 or above, and we were at 21.6. If you go to 22, that is almost abnormal on that piece there in terms of how dark it is with it. All right. This leads us to what we get to see up here at the lodge. This was taken in July of 2 years ago, about 3:30 in the morning. Chris Gerbert, who's our outdoor activities lead, took this picture. He and I are sitting at the driveway up and looking and seeing the Milky Way and how it basically goes across the sky. So pretty beautiful there. And then you look at it from when you have the northern lights. And so we're open year round now. And so as an International Dark Sky Park, you have to be accessible 24/7. And so we allow people on the property to be able to do that and be able to see things, on the golf course, which most golf courses wouldn't allow on that piece there. But if you think about it, you have open spaces on the fairways and so forth. You can look up and see things north, east, west, and south there. So this was taken where I'm looking out the window here on the southeast side of the lodge, looking north on that piece there last year. So we are actually in the 11th year of 11-year cycle of the solar flares. And so we're seeing a active sun in terms of the solar flares with that. That said, northern lights and solar flares happen every single day. The question is, do they happen far enough south, and do they happen during the nighttime or light hours on that piece there? And do you have clear skies there? So the basic reasons why we feel that dark skies are important. One, it basically, helps our circadian clock, our rhythm, our sleep patterns, our habits, our digestive systems, our body temperature, and it leads to good health. We need sunshine just like we need darkness on that piece there. We also live in an environment with wildlife and plants and insects. And so, it goes back to, some animals, forage at night. They won't be able to be active, to get their food. The number one animal people think about are bats on that. And so we've had less and less bats in this world because of the more light pollution on that. You're also seeing, the bird migratory patterns be affected when you have a lot of lights, especially in the downtown areas when you're going down south and so forth there. We sit the Keweenaw Peninsula. When I say we, sit in the pattern of many birds going from north to south, south to north throughout the spring and the fall on that piece there. In our Upper Peninsula Dark Sky Festival that we had the second year, we actually had Jared Wolf come in as a lunch speaker and talk about how that plays out in the wildlife and the ecology, with that. So, all right. So, I mean, being able to enjoy getting people back to nature, which is what our focus is here at the Lodge. We're ranked in the top 13 resorts in the country to get people closer to nature. And so, being able to have that wild and wilderness experience, darkness is part of that. So you go back and look at this from what our operation is as a company and as a community member. We work with Visit Keweenaw, which is the tourism agency in the region, and they've created a sustainable tourism initiative, and we're part of that piece there. That's still being defined, I should say. What happens is we understand that the visitors economy, as well as entertainment and overall hospitality industries, are affected, by the darkness and by people coming up from different areas. And so we would work on optimal numbers, not maximum numbers. And so understanding how we coexist in nature is really important. And when you have a good number of visitors, you have to educate them on what is good for the area. And we're seeing a change in the type of visitors because of what we're doing with the Dark Sky Park, as well as our overall initiatives at the Lodge and with the people we work with top of Keweenaw. And so we work with Visit Keweenaw, Whoopitor, Eagle, MEDC, the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification, Next Energy, and more as part of our dark sky initiatives, as well as other initiatives at the Lodge there. So you talked about the WPA already. We are the National Register of Historic Places. And so things back in the 1930s, you weren't necessarily thinking about energy efficiency. You weren't thinking about light pollution. So we basically have to bring things forward and think about the future, but still think about the character of the place. So we have a concept when we look at a four-season historic resort at the top of the Keweenaw that's supported by outdoor activities, rustic, worldly food, and education. We marry history with the future, and we feel that leads to a vibrant, progressive presence in terms of how we are part of the community. We have to now think about, our lighting in our dark skies. And so this is actually lit by natural lights in regards to the moon and the clouds, but also you'll see the lights on the Lodge there. We have since made these dimmer because this, shows it pretty bright, being a reflection off the snow. The interesting thing is when we were doing our dark sky readings, when we're going through the process with John Barrington, who was our program manager at the time with the International Dark Sky Association, which is now called Dark Sky International, we were seeing a full 1-point drop during the wintertime in terms of how dark, the meter was reading. And the correlation is when there's more snow on the ground. And so that reflection ends up playing a factor on it. We are actually working with a company out of Ann Arbor, a professor at University of Michigan, in terms of solar, panels, little small ones that fit, in a light fixture that will actually help with taking some of that reflection on the snow to actually power lights that we now have on our dark sky paths, which is pretty interesting and neat there. Still in its infancy, still you need to fine tune that technology, but that goes back to how we make decisions at the Lodge and at the International Dark Sky Park with it. So this is a press release we did jointly with the Dark Sky International Group, which at that time was called IDA, International Dark Sky Association. And it just talks about, how we were around the 200th park to be designated on the piece there. And we now submit annual reports to them. And we have to continue to strive to get to be 100% compliant with our light fixtures there. So dark sky friendly light fixtures, basically you're pointing down, you have casings on them, you have 3000 Kelvin or less, you have low lumens, and you turn off the lights when you don't need them. So we've gotten very used to, as a community and a society, to have lights on throughout the entire night, even though there's no one there on that. And the number one reason that people do that is for safety. And so now there's actually reports to show how that light staying on really doesn't provide a benefit safety. It actually provides more glare if you don't have a dark sky friendly light fixture with that. And the details and the sciences, I won't go into that piece there. I'm not the expert of that. I just know it in a cursory fashion because of what we've been doing up here. But John Barrington, who also presented as a Keweenaw Sustainable Tourism talk, has some of that data, as that's his full-time practice. He has left the International Dark Sky Association, or Dark Sky International, and now his own consulting practice to help places like the Lodge, like the Keweenaw, like Houghton, to get better at their understanding how to be dark sky friendly and foster the dark skies that are above us. This shows you the 4 international dark sky parks and sanctuaries in Michigan. Beaver Island was just designated a sanctuary 2 months ago in April. The Headlands was the 7th or 8th one in the world, and then us, and then DK Lawless down Southwest Michigan there. And then what happens is you have 2+ Michigan sites that are also applying, from my understanding, and so we might see 5 or 6 of us, the next 24 months to 48 months, which would be rather neat there. When I was talking with the Michigan DNR director, Scott Bowen, this morning, basically, we talked about laws that are in place that don't allow any of the state parks in the Upper Peninsula to be an international dark sky park. That law, we're not sure why it was put in place, was probably 10, 15 years old. But it's interesting why you would specifically not allow a state park to be a international dark sky destination with it. So I haven't found anybody that explained why that's the case, but if you think about it, the Upper Peninsula is a dark sky park entirely, if you think about where we're sitting with that. So we have our own websites with the Keweenaw Dark Sky Park. So we nurture and foster dark skies. The headquarters is at the Lodge, so we do outreach, we do education, we do monthly photo workshops, we do festivals to explain to people the benefit of it. And then we are open 24/7 as a physical facility. There's 560 acres here. We now pay attention to the moon phases. June 6th was a new moon. We hold the photo workshops around then. You think about this throughout the year. You have snow on the ground. You actually have your snowshoe hikes where you don't need any flashlights, which is rather neat, and understand how to go out and take pictures of the beauty that's out there. This shows you taking a golf course and putting it to use at night. And most golf course superintendents would not allow this because they would be very fearful of people damaging the course. We've taken a different perspective. We do believe we're a wilderness golf course, not a golf course in the wilderness, so we maintain it as such. And this means we also put paths out to viewing areas that people then can go out and see at night. We do have our last golfer off the golf course by 7 o'clock at night. And as you all know, it doesn't get dark till about 10:30 or 11 o'clock this month. And so people can spend some time walking the golf course before it gets dark, get their location. And then when it gets to be dark like last night, you can go out to hole number 4, walk on a certain path, you can go out to hole number 7 and so forth there. This ties into places on Brockway Mountain Drive, which basically you can get to by driving your car up there and looking south to see the Milky Way, and then you can take a hiking trail to look north to see the Northern Lights across Lake Superior with that. That said, hold on here. That said, basically there's multiple areas in the Keweenaw, and this goes back to education. And so places for Esri Park or Hayberg Park, or going down to McLean State Park, and just enjoying what we have here. And we all grew up probably taking the stars for granted, and that means we didn't value it very much. And now as we see the lights take over the dark skies, we're starting to value more things. And who would have thought that just by turning off your lights, you'd see people that are respecting, what we're doing up here and coming up from Chicago or Milwaukee, or we're getting people from Tennessee and Ohio and Indiana, all just to see the Milky Way and see the constellations, and then hope to see the Northern Lights. And That's something that some of us, had when we were growing up, and we took for granted. If you're living in Chicago, you don't see that anymore. If you live in New York City, you don't see that anymore, and so forth. So we educate people on how we're doing that. The Keweenaw Heartlands is also part, of understanding how the dark skies will play into it, because Nature Conservancy bought, a little over 32,000 acres around us here. That will ensure that there won't be a lot of development to need lights on that piece there. And so we're, talking to the Nature Conservancy to educate them on the dark skies. The interesting thing is that, it's something that's in addition to what they're doing now, and they really haven't thought about it much. And so it's nice to be able to have that conversation with Julia and Rich Bowman and Helen Taylor and Rich Kaninsky, that are all, and Emily Clegg, are all part of that project that's working towards, keeping the top of the Keweenaw a wilderness aspect, which then ultimately would be, fostering the dark skies. That said, if you put one big spotlight, on the road of US 41 and this property, you take away from things that are special. And so, you can have great lighting and not pollute, not trespass. And I'll show you an example how we saw that when we changed our street lights, and how the light changed from going across the fairways 1 and 2 to not even hitting the fairway on 1 when you're looking at the cabins with that. So pretty neat in terms of what existing lands were there, and then what they've added with that. We sit in the middle of that, as you can see where the logo is there. So we're fortunate to have the Nature Conservancy and the DNR be supportive of what this place is all about. Talking about the golf course, in our scorecard, we actually, we walk, we don't just preach, we do, walk the talk. And so in the scorecard, you'll actually see basically the daytime picture and the nighttime picture on that. And we talked to golfers, hey, when you're done, you can also go out at night and see the dark skies there. So this is actually handed out to each golfer that's coming. And so again, that's something that wouldn't necessarily be found at other golf courses. Tied to it, the Audubon International, in regards to being a sanctuary golf course. And so we're talking to them about how, being in one with nature also means being one with the darkness that's out there. So it's pretty neat with that. We are a Audubon International Certified Lodging Establishment. We're working towards being a sanctuary golf course there, all to improve our environment and our habitat there. Any questions before I go on? Okay, so we could talk about dark skies, but question is our sky darker than Arizona and Tucson, or Austin, Texas, where I'm from, or, Marquette and the likes there? So there's the Bortle scale that people use and familiar with, and the lower the number, the better. We're about a 1 or 2 on that scale. And then there's actually the SQM number here. And so this is where I mentioned that basically we were measuring between 21.5 and 21.6 when we filed our application initially in 2021 on the piece there. We take measurements every month and we post them on our website. So this, it says KML Sky Quality Measurements spreadsheet, you can actually see, how our numbers are since we've actually been designated in 2022 with that. So I think we're getting close to 1,000 readings now. And so pretty interesting. We take it in 5 or 6 different places once a month. And, it's interesting, again, to confirm or, fail to reject the hypotheses that John Barrington came up with in regards to snow being a factor, with the lowering it at a full point there during the wintertime when there's snow on the ground. I'm not sure if you can see this picture or not, but this is actually a 360 on hole number 4 that we used in our application. But you can actually see the light domes of Marquette and the light domes of Houghton, Hancock, Calumet, Laurium. So the center part there, that's Marquette. If you see that little glow in the picture there, it's gonna be right around here. And then over on the right-hand side of that picture is going to be Houghton Hancock and Calumet and Laurium on that piece there. Hopefully, we would see these increase over the years. So, we kind of keep our pulse on that there, because as you can see, even though we're 45 miles from Houghton, we're seeing some of the effect there, or we're 140 something miles from Marquette, we're seeing the effect there with it. So it's something to think about in terms of things, and it can be addressed on the pieces there. So if everyone had a dark sky friendly light fixture, you wouldn't see those pieces in the light dome there. So this picture, by the way, was taken by Tom Oliver when he was working with us as an employee. And so he went out early in the morning. I don't know, it was about 1 to 3 in the morning to take this picture there. And I think there was snow on the ground. And so he was on the snowshoes there walking out to take the picture on a cold evening with that. So, and he has a nice story there. So it actually says 28 degrees right there on that. So this is the border scale, I should say. And so we sit between 1 and 2 on this scale there. But you can see, regards to if you were in the inner cities like Chicago, you're hardly seeing any of the stars there. Whereas if you're a rural sky or dark sky site, you're basically able to really see the clear nuances of the Milky Way and the galaxy that's with that there. So it's pretty interesting. Our application, we basically have followed something similar to when I was a professor in publishing, is that a revise and resubmit was our goal. It wasn't to get accepted, but it was a revise and resubmit. If you have a revise and resubmit, then you have a chance, a probability of greater than 0 to be accepted, and that's all we were trying to do. Whenever we go after a designation, we're not trying to achieve the designation, we're trying to get better, and the reward is actually getting the designation. If you don't, you still got better. And so we're just fine with that in terms of journey. We had 4 versions of this, and so the first one was submitted April 22nd, 23rd, Earth Day in 2021. The 4th one was during Earth Day on 2022. And then we were designated officially during June 21st, the summer solstice on 2022. So we're coming in on our 2-year anniversary with that. We posted the applications. You can still see them on our website. So we're about transparency on that piece there. And so then you're able to go out and see the applications, the communication with the IDA, the support letters that we've received on that piece there. And then the schedule. So all this is on our website and our special projects. So we do that with multiple projects that we're working on. So about our B Corp, you'll know about our Audubon International Green Lodging and Audubon Sanctuary Golf Course process and so forth there. So you can read the emails that we're going back and forth with Ashley Wilson in terms of responses, because she took over from John Barentine, and then she curated us through the process, or fostered us through the process within their organization there. The number of pages. So you'll see that basically we are over 150 pages with our application. So this is not something that you just do overnight. It's something that basically you build over time. And we also have annual reports that we then administer, and we can also lose our designation if we don't adhere to the criteria that they have. These are some of the support letters that we received from economic development organizations to businesses to townships and so forth there, all the way up to the state level, down to the community level, local community level there. So that was rather neat to have that support throughout the state there. All right. And then also from an organization, so something that we don't talk much about, but it's pretty interesting. We were the first privately owned dark sky park destination there. And so the last question that we had to address was that concern, because you have a national park that has a designation, you'll have a state park or a county park and so forth there. And so what they had us do is write a corporate resolution that we're going to basically run this company with these items in this resolution there. Pretty simple stuff. It follows our DNA, so it wasn't that hard to agree to this piece there. And then also they were very happy about the deed restrictions that the lodge has in regards to being a historic national, on the historic national register, because we also have to adhere to keeping things in good character with the State Historical Preservation Office, which handles the National Park Services register there. So we have a light management plan, and so it goes back to something that talks about dark sky friendly lighting, fully shielded, 3,000 Kelvin or less. And then when there's an option, we use timers and motion sensors and have them stay on less than 5 minutes on that piece there. The interesting thing is that it's also energy consumption, piece tied to this. And so we had an energy audit done in 2018, 2019, right after I purchased the property, to understand where our weaknesses were. Think about these cabins were built in the 1930s, and they were, again, thinking about, energy efficiency back then. And, I think we are still, in terms of UPCO, still the second highest utility in the country behind Hawaii. It could be mistaken, but it's not inexpensive to run operations with electricity up here. And so finding ways to be more energy efficient just made a lot of organizational sense, with that. And so light fixtures are a big piece. I mean, basically Edison light bulbs, they're LED. You have then the street lights that are also 3,000 Kelvin and less, and they're LED there. Craig Waddle, who's on the call here, would also talk about how he listened to John Barentine talk about how LEDs actually might be a negative, to dark skies, because they're so easy and inexpensive to put in place. People are just using them left and right. Well, then you have all these glares, and then some of them turn blue, and blue is not the lights that you want, because it actually affects your eyes when you're trying to look up and so forth there. So, and you have visitor lighting, temporary lighting, but our documents, 5 or 6 pages, and so it's on our website, as you can see with that. That's an important piece for being a dark sky park there. We have now lights out, so we're actually in the middle of that for June. So it's about 7 to 10 day period where all our street lights are off. The only lights you'll see on during the nights would be the light that you see at the entryway. There's a red light, and then there's actually the sign light, and then at the front door that we have there. But all the other lights are off with that during that time period there. We email all of our guests, let them know so they're not concerned about that piece there. And that's that we're finding out that they're actually coming up here for the lights out aspect of it there. So people have asked us from an economic standpoint, have we seen an increase in visitors? Our goal is not an increase in visitors. Our goal is to get a fit with our visitors in terms of, values and so forth there. So what we've seen is a change in the type of visitor that's coming up here. We have people that are charging their EV vehicles, or people that are coming up here to get closer to nature with the lights out and the quietness and the clean air and so forth. And so we have, we can put 155 people in the beds here, but we actually do a maximum of 80 at any given time, because it's an optimal number that we're going after, not a maximum number on that piece there. And this goes back to the dark skies. If you go down to Headlands and go down to Dr. Keweanaw's, you'll see that during the solar eclipse and during other northern light activities, they have a large increase in number of people, and you lose the intimacy of being closer to what you're trying to get closer to, which is basically nature. And so we are fortunate that we have been able to curate a nice quiet place up here at the top of the Keweenaw there. So things to think about: International Dark Sky Week that happens every April. Our Upper Peninsula Dark Sky Festival usually is around that time. And so if you pay attention to Dark Sky International, Michigan Dark Skies with Sally, and then Dark Sky International Michigan chapter with Robin, and then Starry Skies Northern IDA with Todd, you can just jump onto their sites and really pay attention to what they're doing. They're going to be doing the same, same thing that we're trying to curate up here, which is really nice. So if you speak of the Upper Peninsula Dark Sky Festival, we started in 2023. We had speakers from different places of the country come and join us. So Chris, who's our outdoor activity lead, leads that festival. And then you had Jamie, who's actually the director of the Headlands Park. You had Astro Bob, and you had Andrew Johnson. Some of the speakers were in 2023 with that. The governor, did a proclamation, basically saying Dark Sky Week, April 15th, 22nd in 2023, were mentioned in that. And so you'll see the state parks, as well as you'll see the International Dark Sky Parks. At that time, there were 3 of them. And so that's led to basically these lights out during that time. We initiated that in 2023. Then we should put this at the front desk. We'll let guests know. And then what happens is it goes back to what we're doing with the lighting. So January and February, during when we started the process of the application at Dark Sky Park, we had these light fixtures changed out. And so if you look at the right pictures, you'll see the evolution of what the lights do across the cabins in across Fairway 1 and then ultimate Fairway 2. I would be grooming the snowshoe cross-country ski trails, and I'd be on near hole number 2 green, and I would have light come all the way across there. And so kind of give a perspective, that's probably 500 to 600 yards that you were seeing light go out. That way with the high pressure sodium lights fixtures that had no shield on them. We then changed them to the Cobra heads on that piece there, and you can see how basically we actually have more street lights turned on, but there's less light being trespassed. And so you see it shooting straight down, and you look at that bottom picture, you can see the square, of that light there. The light that you're seeing from the camera, there's actually light behind the camera with that. And you'll see that we changed that. So you look at the top picture, you can see how that light goes across and goes towards the cabins, whereas in that bottom picture, it's straight down from the camera, which is rather nice with that. And that's looking towards Brockway Mountain and down hole number 1 fairway there. But this is just for changing the light fixtures with it. So the high pressure sodium is this light here. This is Bay Electric that was working on this one here. And so they took this high pressure sodium light and then put this Cobra head from Truly Green Solutions up on there in January and February of 2021. We do small experiments. So what happens is we did one light, we let it sit for 2 months around cabin 24 and 25 on Golf Course Road. We saw how it played out, and then we felt comfortable that we understood the dimming aspect of it. We agree with the lumens and the kelvins and so forth there. And then we went to the other 27 lights that we have. So we have 28 street lights that are on with that piece there. So you can see that made a big difference when you look down the left side there. That's not the last thing we did. We also then put basically light switches right during the festival in 2023. And so this is Keweenaw Power and Light that was installing these pieces there. So we can manually go in and turn off every single light on the piece, or one light and so forth, which is rather nice for our cabin guests, because they can sit there and not have a light that's going to be right next to their bedroom and so forth there. Now that required us to manually go in and change those and walk around the property and then test things out with it. So that led us to the 2nd annual Upper Peninsula Dark Sky Festival. Again, the governor wrote another proclamation for this year into April 2nd to 8th to be Dark Sky Week there. And you'll actually see that now she mentions Beaver Island basically applying and seeking to become the first official dark sky sanctuary in the state of Michigan. And since that proclamation, Beaver Island has now become an official dark sky sanctuary with that. And we had different speakers. Jamie did come back with the Headlands. Robert Nemiroff, who's actually from Michigan Tech, talk about the photo of the week or the day, I think, of it. And so he talked about that there. And then Dave Faulkner from NASA came and talked about telescopes and so forth there. And we had other people, as you can see in the list there. So rather nice. 3 nights, so that is. And then we'll do the same thing in 2025 there, which would be the later part of April, because that's when International Dark Sky Week was. As part of this, we actually then put Wi-Fi modules on our streetlights. And so we can actually now control all our streetlights with a click of a button individually, which is rather nice. We can dim them, we can go to 100%, we can go to 5% and so forth. And we can do it throughout the property, which is rather nice with that there. So that goes back to not having, unnecessary lights on the property and for our guests and visitors. We are open 24/7 for the Dark Sky Park, so you don't have to stay with us to come up and enjoy the pieces there. But what happens is we do have facilities that then allow you to understand where best to view the Northern Lights or the Milky Way or any other planets out there. We talk about lighting. So this picture in the bottom right, that's that solar panel light that is from the professor down in Ann Arbor. And so these are all little solar panels inside here. And so the idea is that it reflects off and utilizes that snow as that piece there. We have 10 of those as part of one of their pilots. I think they have 100 lights and they have 10 different sites. We're one of those 10 around the state of Michigan with that. We have since put a red film around that, working with the founder. And so that's a big piece because red lights doesn't take away from your vision. When you walk out of inside your building with white lights, you need about 45 minutes for your eyes to truly adjust to see, the details of the sky. And if you're looking at, red lights, you can go straight from looking down to looking up when you're outside. And so that's a big part. We put red lights in different strategic areas around the property, and we continue to try to get better at that. So this is more about, the red lighting with that. We educate people when they're here to those nuances. This is about the dark sky compliant light fixtures. And so if you think about it, that high pressure sodium lights that we replaced in the street lights was this very bad light there. The interesting thing is you actually have this in Calumet down Main Street on the pieces there. And so I have a couple of buildings that are in Calumet, and we sit there and look at those and, working with the DDA to understand, how that's affecting, the light glow and the light, pollution and so forth is a process. And so ideally we want to get to the best piece where it's basically fully shielded and the light goes down. But it takes time to get people to understand that. And with Calumet, for example, you have a historical district that you're in. And so how do you create the ambiance of the character that Calumet's known for and still gets a dark sky compliant fixture? I don't know the answer to that, but if we work together, we might be able to figure that out sooner than later with that. And by the way, you can get a list of dark sky compliant fixtures and manufacture and so forth from Dark Sky International website. They have a database on that piece there. They try to keep it updated, but things are changing constantly with manufacturers there. This goes back to what 3000 Kelvin means. And so you can see it's on the yellow spectrum here. And so, Craig, if you're there, we talk about amber on the pieces there. That's going to be, possibly at 2200 to 2700 Kelvin that we kept on going back and forth on when you were up here talking about the lights. But we sit at our 3000 Kelvin. That's our piece there. 2700 is more ideal. So, eventually we'll work down to that as part of our criteria of being a dark sky park. I mentioned the light guidelines. You can get those from our website, just to learn more about that. And we do work with the county and other municipalities to talk to them about the benefits of having lights ordinances that will provide safety, but not pollute looking up. So this goes back to what we have showing with our lights out. So this is April 19th, 2023, from one of our webcams looking at hole 1 in Brockway Mountain. And so you can see when we have lights out, the difference, which is the big part of this. And if we had lights on before we changed the high pressure sodium. So we've gone from, basically a large glow to all you see is this little light here is the front entrance sign that I showed you where it says Keweenaw Mountain Lodge on that piece there, and that's the only light you'd see there. So this is a Northern Lights. Again, this is March 23rd, 2023, illustrating the connection with the golf course and the cabins. And so you'll see there's lights on the cabins, but there's not light out in this area here. And so that's the whole piece. And you can see the Northern Lights going up in this area here. And you'll see the 1930s tractor that we have out front here in Toro with that. And this is the moon. So you can see the moon looking out that way, which is really nice, and Brockway sitting right there. This is February 26th, 2023. Chris Cabrera, again, who's outdoor activities lead, talks about, how you can take these pictures. And this is looking north over cabins. This is cabin 5 and cabin 4, right there in cabin 3, which is rather neat with that. So pretty neat stuff. We do our Northern Lights and night sky photography workshops each month. And so examples here is August 18th last year on the new moon, Tom Oliver will talk about the night sky photography workshop. He did the one last night here for June. And then Nate Betts is another photographer that we work with. And this is November 11th. He again comes up each month on that piece there. We do our moonlit snowshoe hikes that get people to understand, the ability to walk in snowshoes at night without a lot of light because of the reflection of the snow and off the moon on that piece there. We have an all sky camera. So you actually can go on our website and you can actually see what the sky looks like. It's sitting right above me. My son Martin handles that piece there. And so we look to tweak that. We're getting better and better at that piece there. But being able to see time lapses of the Northern Lights on those cameras is pretty neat on that piece there. Mm-hmm. Part of our DNA, the dark skies, Audubon, B Corp, so forth, and then we just got certified to be a gold certification piece. It's all tied together, and something that really is good for the environment. We also feel is good for business. It gets people closer to nature with that. Leave No Trace, we're one of those partners there. So is the Keweenaw and understanding sustainable tourism, because if you get a lot of people up here and they're not disposing their waste properly, or they're holding, having campfires in multiple areas, it's not going to be fun for anybody. It's just going to take away from what this place is about. And so we were part of Visit Keweenaw's hosting of 2 Leave No Trace trainers last month, I believe. St. Calumet at the Keweenaw National Historic Park hosted that physically, and just talks about understanding these 7 principles that Leave No Trace has, and understanding you can have visitors here, but you have to be able to not be overrun, with a lot of trash and so forth. And the same thing with light pollution on that. Working with Quiet Park, being a quiet place. We close this building at 6 o'clock each night, and we do private dinners, maximum 12 people. What that means is basically people can walk the golf course, they can be outside until dark, and then see a quiet place with it. And that's very important for us. And, it's something that not many places in the world have these days. Earth Day is pretty neat. We filed the first version of the application for Dark Skies in 2021, and then 2022 we got our final version. Every April 22nd is Earth Day, which is something that we think is important. Investing in our planet there. B Corp, we were certified March 14th on that piece there. So again, business of force for good. And so you look at the governance of the company, transparency, look at how you treat your workers and your employees. You work with the community, the environment, and your customers there. So, and basically, just like the Dark Skies, you have to have those annual reports. We do the same thing with the B Corp with that, and they're continuing to audit us, as well as the Audubon International for green lodging. And this is what drives us as a company. And I bring this up just because it's something that's leads us to make decisions like becoming a dark sky park or making sure that we're getting people close to nature. And so anyone that joins the team should have, a value of what your team members are, what your customers and guests are, community and environment. And then what makes us special are those secondary values, and these 7 that the team came up with in 2019. So adapt according to the situation in a positive manner. You look conflict in the eye and gracefully wipe it out. Be fearless and persistent in learning on a daily basis. Respect others. Check the eagles at the door. Appreciate life and be welcoming. That leads to a fun, joyous, and adventuresome environment up here for the team members as well as our guests that are visiting the resort on that piece there. And this is all historical lodging that's supported by outdoor activities, rustic worldly food, and education. So when people leave the lodge, they're more knowledgeable than when they came. Okay. I think I'll just turn it over to questions and discussions and how we all can foster the dark skies.